So we were unsure if we should talk about this, but we decided that because it's such a big pet peeve for both of us, and a lot of people that are respectable and smart are very bad at this, that we should talk about it. And that is having productive political conversations. So Arielle and I certainly aren't perfect at this, but I do believe that we have improved quite a bit over the last couple of years. And so we have some good tips to share on this. And we're going to be talking about both in-person as well as online discussions. So let's get started.
So the first thing that I think that we should address is the fact that we do not in any way think that you need to think on the same page politically to have a relationship with someone, whether that be with your family, a partner, or even friends. We know many people who don't necessarily agree the same things that we do, but we still get along. A lot of the people that I think when I look at political conversations is I already know what they believe, and I already will know if someone's going to get heated about a conversation or not. This is something to take into consideration before you have that conversation, just because if you both are gonna be angry and aggressive and it's going to ruin your relationship, it's really not worth having. So if you do want to know where someone stands politically, it is important for you to ask, but there are a few things to keep in mind before you even have this conversation. So is this the right time, place, and are you both on a good emotional foundation where you can actually have this conversation and it be productive? And make sure that it's a safe environment for you both to voice your opinions if that's where you're going to go with this. The next thing that I think is really important is asking what they believe on a certain topic. And that's because most people, if you ask their political party, you are going to assume so many things. If they say Republican or Democrat, you're going to assume that they believe everything on a really far right standpoint or a really far left. And most of the time, that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes people aren't as far left or far right as we think, and so we do need to take that into consideration when we start this conversation. If you do want to have a good outcome with this conversation, an important thing to do is to listen. I know most of us, if we're getting into a conversation where we don't necessarily agree with each other, we start thinking of already what we are going to say in response to one thing that they said, and we're not listening to everything that they're trying to tell us. And being a good listener and having a good conversation is so important in topics like politics because people are so emotionally invested in some of the things that they do believe. So the last thing that I want to talk about before you get into a conversation is to know how to control your emotions and to not react to what they're about to tell you. You know, maybe go into it with preparing that they're going to be completely opposite on the things that you are most passionate about. And that's okay because it's an opinion. However, if you get your emotions into it right away and you react to what they're saying, even with a facial expression, it's going to change the whole tone of the conversation. Also, getting emotionally involved with topics like this is not going to help you prove your point or prove your cause.
So before you get into any kind of political discussion, I want you to ask yourself this question. Am I about to type this on Facebook.com? If the answer is yes, you should probably rethink doing that. So Facebook discussions are usually just arguments and attacks, and they are entertaining. I won't lie about that. But as far as productivity, they're probably the least productive way that you can have a conversation with someone about anything, especially politics. So think about the way a political argument usually happens. Someone posts something in the news with what they think about it, and then you'll have a bunch of people in the comments. Most of them are saying, "So true, amen, I agree, that kind of thing. And then you'll have the one person that'll disagree. And then what happens at that point? They may even have a well thought out idea or an insightful topic, but none of that even matters because they usually get pounced on by not only the original poster, but all of their friends as well. And that mob mentality is the reason that I cannot stand Facebook so much. People can't disagree healthily, and this is what happens as a result. These posts tend to end with personal attacks on the person, or attacking their grammar mistakes, or just something else that doesn't even have to do with politics, and that's why it's so toxic. I'm definitely tempted sometimes to post on something or comment on something that I don't agree with, but I always remind myself of my golden rule of Facebook, which is you don't care what anybody else has to say, and nobody cares what you have to say either.
So going into a political conversation, most of the time y'all aren't going to agree on everything, and some things that you might actually get pissed off or just really angry and emotional about. And the important thing to do when going into this kind of discussion is to remember to remain calm. So even if you are really passionate about a topic, just remember that no one has actually lived the same life that you have. We don't have the same experiences, same upbringings, any of that. And this also affects our political views. Our upbringing does have a really big part in how we believe politically. So when you're in this conversation and you're starting to get riled up, it is important to remain calm and also to take some deep breaths. Don't let that emotion show on your face, and calm yourself internally before you say your next sentence. If you feel like you can't get calm in that scenario, maybe it's better to just take a pause from the conversation and come back at a later time.
A helpful tip to keep in mind when you're having political conversations is to know what your end goal is. We might think that we have some sort of duty to educate the other side about what they think is wrong and we're right. But oftentimes what we're really just seeking is validation from the other people that are going to be reading those posts, and just a sense of self-worth and entitlement that you know better. Very rarely does either side change their view or even have an open mind in the first place. So if your end goal is to change somebody's mind, you're not going to get to that by publicly shaming them or just ranting about how insane the other side is. That's not a way to be productive. So next time that you find yourself in a political discussion, just take a moment and try to be real with yourself about what your end goal is. Another thing that I do personally for myself is I try to surround myself with people of a variety of mindsets. There are people that I talk to often that lean far left, as well as people that lean far right. And I prefer it this way. This can be a tricky topic because I myself have hidden people on Facebook when they just post ridiculous things over and over. And that's okay to do, that's a healthy thing to do. But the downside of that is that I have seen a lot of posts that people share that are pretty extreme one way, and not one person is opposing that viewpoint in the comments, which makes me think that they only really surround themselves with people that share their viewpoints. If you block everybody out of your life who shares opposing viewpoints, it's no surprise when you start to get disconnected from reality and your ego just gets inflated. When you're absorbing news, it's important to recognize that all of us have a little bit of confirmation bias, and that's natural. Obviously, the big news sources, Fox News, CNN, are going to lean pretty heavily, and everybody recognizes that. So to combat this, I suggest just trying to get your news from a variety of sources. I watch some of the big ones, and I also watch a few different YouTube news sources, and they tend to stay a little bit more moderate. There is obviously no such thing as a perfectly unbiased source. So the best thing that we can do is just fact check everything ourselves and try to diversify the sources that we're getting our information from.
So throughout this video, maybe you have decided to have that conversation with someone, or maybe you have rethought it and decided that it wasn't worth your time or theirs. Either way, just know that you're not going to change their opinion most likely, and they're not going to change yours. So if you do feel like you need to voice your opinion or be validated or feel like you're making an impact, there are a few things that you can do that don't involve having a political discussion with someone, and actually making an impact on not only the people around you, but possibly even larger as a country. So the most obvious way to get your voice out there is to actually vote. A lot of people actually voted in the 2020 election, which was awesome, great. But there were so many people that didn't vote and didn't register to vote because they didn't think that it was important and that their side would just chug along and do their thing. But that's not always the case. The other thing that you can do to support your cause or the party that you back is to even make donations for their campaigning or just for their different causes that they are working towards. So signing petitions for certain laws, bills, or different causes is another way that you can just put your individuality into whatever you are specifically believing in. Another way that you can express your concerns or your opinions is to even write letters or emails to your local government or even senators. It's also really important to note that a lot of people don't even vote in their local elections, whether it be their city or their state. Most people just think of voting as the big presidential voting, but there's a lot more things that go into it than just who is our president. So whatever you do decide, if you decide to input your voice into what's happening in our government and in politics, the most important thing for you is to actually do it if that's what your goal is. If you are passionate about something, then put your foot out there. Be someone that helps make a change.
So yeah, those are some of our tips that we have for you. I hope none of this was taken too personally. We just feel somewhat strongly about the way that we see a lot of people interact online and in person. And I think that we as a society can do better.
So if you did like our video, please like and subscribe. If you guys have any suggestions or comments or even questions, feel free to write them in the comments below. We would love to hear your voice, your opinion, and even any more videos that you would like for us to come up with.
Thanks again for watching. See you next time.
See ya.
Are those peaches?
Yes.
Okay.